guys, it's Nina from VRFocus. I am joined here by...
Hello, Dave Ranyard.
So tell me a little bit about who you are, what you're doing in the virtual reality, augmented reality space.
Sure, well I've been making video games for 20 years. Did a big part of my career was at Sony, where I made augmented reality games, VR games as well, and then a couple of years ago broke out, set up my own studio, Dream Reality Interactive. We're based in London. It's about 10 of us plus some additional people, and we have one announced project which is called Hold the World with Sir David Attenborough and the Naturalist Museum, which we're very excited about, and then a couple of other projects that haven't been announced yet but we're equally as excited about. And we work in virtual reality, augmented reality, and really for us it's about immersive experiences. That's what excites us. So we're not tied just to games. We love interactive content. We love social content, and we love intuitive, simple, easy to get interactions.
So coming from like such a huge company like Sony and creating products for PlayStation, how come you decided to break off and do your own thing?
It was like a really exciting opportunity. I loved my time at Sony. I'm a big Sony fanboy, but this was the right time for me to do something more individual, I guess. I've done my own businesses in the past, so it wasn't completely scary or completely new. So yeah, and I've loved every minute of it, I have to say. It's very exciting. It's such an exciting space to be in.
Is there something like in your mind it's like your dream project that you would love to work on?
Well, to be honest, the things that we're doing at the moment are pretty exciting, really. I mean, very pleased with the products that we have now. I've worked on some really interesting products in the past. I just love doing new things, engaging audiences in innovative ways, and this is one of the most exciting times to be alive. I guess one of the things, so way back when, before I made games, I did a PhD in artificial intelligence, and the joke I currently use is it's been useless for about 19 years. But now, artificial intelligence is pretty interesting, and we have the scale with the compute power to actually do something real. So a lot of big tech companies into it as well. And I believe that immersive technologies such as augmented reality and virtual reality are the best interfaces to AI. So just as the computing paradigm is basically moving from sort of database, spreadsheet, number crunching to AI, which is a bit more complex. Visually, things are moving from essentially 2D to 3D, and I think that space where they connect is really interesting. I think that's actually, so the project I will be most excited to work on will be some kind of balance between the two.
Combination.
Yeah.
There's a lot of interesting stuff happening there. When it comes to gaming and it comes to documentary and film, how do you see those sort of different avenues coming with virtual reality, mixed reality, augmented reality? Do you think they belong in their own specific category? And when it comes to like 360 film and virtual reality, they're two separate things, but how do you see all of that panning out in the future? Do you think they're all going to come together?
So I think if you take a step back, I think fundamentally as human beings we love stories and storytelling, and that is human nature, and it's part of what defines us as a species, really. And so things like films, games, they're telling us stories. And certainly for non-fiction, I think VR has really been embraced because it's also been described as an empathy engine, for example, and that's kind of what it is. So whether it's in an interactive VR experience or a 360, if you can give a taste of what it's actually like to be a person in a certain situation, like today in the world or in history, that has a huge, it's a huge opportunity to educate people, and that for me is really valuable. And I know there's some stats around people experiencing like 360 documentaries about some bad thing that's happening in the world at the moment, and then for example for charities getting a huge uplift in donations. Now, that's maybe a cynical way of looking at it, but equally it shows the success, the impact, exactly. And so I find that really interesting, and I think right now, telling stories of real life, VR, 360 and interactive are both, actually very, very compelling. I think there's probably certain things that help that. So for example, that kind of story can be told in a fairly short piece of content. So you might get a very empathic response to a 5-minute film, right? Whereas if you're traditionally making 2D big movies that are an hour and a half, you need a lot more depth, and we're perhaps not quite there for that length of time in AR and VR. So I think that's one of the reasons why non-fiction has been attracted, or it's fitted well. And also there's that experimentation, and also it's just like, if you like a news piece and you can actually be in the place where it is and you can kind of get a feeling of how dangerous it is or uncomfortable or whatever, then that works. It's a very simple hit as a human being.
So there's two separate things that I think are quite interesting and a lot of people talk about when it comes to VR and telling stories. One of them is, how realistic does everything have to be? When you do a 360 film, isn't it more important to make it volumetric so you can actually physically walk around in the space rather than it being a bubble around you? And then second is, how important do you think interactivity is when it comes to the experience? Do you think that when a player or a person interacts with objects or things, do you think that increases the amount of empathy someone can feel?
Okay, so for the first question, I find it more engaging if it is volumetric capture. I think you can do something great in surround, but I do think there's some immersion breakers. Things that are close up are the wrong size, that kind of thing. So when it becomes unrealistic, those things like take you out of the immersion. So I think it's less about what's more immersive, it's more about immersion breakers in that context. I don't think things need to be realistic at all. I mean, you can watch a great cartoon movie and cry, right? I'm sure everybody's done it. Didn't look realistic, and it's the same principles apply. It's more about believability. It's more about empathy. As humans, we look for certain basic things like a smile, eyes, eyebrows, those things, and those can be abstracted out not to being on a real person. And in many ways, actually, doing things non-realistic means that you don't hit uncanny valley and things like that. So you can remove some of those concerns for the mind, if you like. So hopefully that's the first bit. Then the second bit around interactivity, I certainly think interactivity improves immersion and empathy, but it can also be a distraction from a strong narrative. Now, actually being first person and taking part in something like that is very empathic, and if you have that empowering nature of interacting, it just amplifies and amplifies. But at the same time, if you make a complete sandbox world and you're trying to tell a very specific story, people are going to lose the thread. So it perhaps depends on the purpose of the creative piece.
What are you here to talk about at Open City Doc? You've got a bunch of other people who've done virtual reality. What are the topics that you'd like to discuss today? So really, we wanted to talk about, I think people who make games have probably got a deeper experience of VR, certainly when you get into interactivity and so on. And so we want to share some of those learnings, some of those thoughts. I've asked all the panelists to think of a really compelling VR narrative to discuss to begin with. And then we're going to talk about, what are the challenges, what are the kind of top tips, what are the gotchas, where are the interesting spaces, where's the commercial opportunities at the moment. So a little bit of everything, really. Not too deep or expert, but hopefully to get a nice rounded view of storytelling in VR. For sort of our viewers who like to create immersive and VR and AR games, apps, stories, is there a tip that you'd like to give them from your personal experience? Yeah, well, the one thing I'll say to most developers actually is do one thing really, really well. Don't try and overcomplicate. Don't get something that's okay and then layer on more okay things. Get one thing and do it really, really well. And is there one thing, like a tip you'd say, like 100% try and avoid that? Don't do it. Well, I think in terms of storytelling, a lot of people are used to having control of the camera and think about cuts and think about long shots and close-ups, and that's not available, and so yeah, I think you have to throw a lot of that stuff out. Throw all the camera work out. Yeah. Maybe some people can make it work. I haven't seen anything that's made it work for me yet. So yeah, I'd say that's probably the biggest thing to start again with. And what are you personally most excited about? It could be a technology, or it could be a project that you really enjoy and love. Well, I think that there's two things I'm really excited about. One is I think social in VR is really cool, being in a place with your friends and experiencing it and sharing that experience. And that's just human nature. If
you know, you don't go on a roller coaster and never speak about it, right? And okay, roller coaster is a bit of a rubbish trope these days for VR, but you know what I mean. If you're going to create an experience that can only be done there, you want to be able to talk about it, you want to be able to share it. And then the second one is, you know, I studied AI a long time ago. I'm very excited that we now have the compute power to use AI well, and I think that AI and immersive tech are going to fuse, and that's going to be an incredibly powerful place to be. So that's probably my most exciting place to be.
Well, thank you so much for doing this interview. Where can we go? Is there a website where we can find all of your projects and your work?
Okay, yeah, dreamrealityinteractive.com.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
And head over to VRFocus.com if you want to find out any more about virtual reality, and I will see you there.